all right, we're going to get you your goal. We're going to work out with kettlebells, dumbbells. We're going to 3 days a week. We're going to work out really hard.
I'm out.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. And this is by the end of this, you're going to look great. You're going to feel you're going to lose that 20 pounds. You're going to play with your grandkids and all that, right? It's sell the dream, right? Not the actual process to get there.
It's such a great point. Matt, what's up? Back in the studio.
What's up, Rick? What's going on, man?
You, dude. So I'm glad to pull you away for 20 minutes or so to get you out of there.
That's all you get, buddy. I got a call. Let's get going.
I know. We got to chop. All right, so we're back. Dad jokes today because we've been vacillating between dad jokes and did you knows. So what do you got? Dad joke or did you know?
I got a dad joke.
Shoot.
Did you hear about the Italian chef that passed away?
No.
Or I screwed it up.
Oh my God. This is how it's been around here lately.
I don't have time for dad jokes.
Okay,
Did
wait.
you hear about the Italian chef who died?
No.
He passed away. There it was.
Do you know that Clay used that same joke?
Oh, shit.
I know.
I think I used somebody else's.
You did. You were just retelling everybody. You guys must be using the same source.
I listen to our podcast in my sleep, so it just like soaks in.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. What do you got? Bring it home.
Let me see. So I've been Christmas shopping, right? So I ordered off of Amazon a chicken and an egg. I'll let you know. Come on, that's pretty good.
That was good.
That's pretty seasonal. Come on. Oh, man. All right, look, what we are going to talk about today is a subject that we cover often, which is it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And I think through the lens of this conversation today, it's about we're going to pick a couple of topics specific to our business or the fitness business, functions that happen in the business and the differences between doing them and then doing them well or with conviction. Yeah. And I think a lot of times what we see and where some confusion will lie is in this exact topic where there's a specific task to be completed or things that need to be done in the business, but the way that you do them is key. Right. And so, and I've got some ideas, and I know you've got a ton of stuff written down. So how about this, Matt? Why don't I interview you today, and you can have a speaking part on the podcast? If it tanks the whole podcast, we'll never come back to it, but we could try that if you want.
He says that like it's not going to happen. So it's fine. It's okay. I appreciate you trying.
Listen how quiet I am right now.
Oh my
Pause
God.
for effect.
Oh, you wanted me to actually start it off. All right. Well, look, we got it down to the 3 categories. Obviously, there's lots more, but we're going to talk about like the how you should do many of these things. So the first one we're going to talk about is time management, and it can be a struggle for a lot of folks because when you're an entrepreneur in a small business, there's many of things that come up, right? There's lots of hats that you have to wear. So time management and focusing on the thing that's going to improve your business sometimes gets, say, lost in the shuffle. Right?
Like the main levers to pull to move the business forward versus
the main
just
things to see.
Busy versus productive.
Right. So we wrote down some examples. One of the things we see often, and you've worked with thousands of business owners throughout the year, and I know you've seen this, is instead of working on the business, we focus specifically on like looking at data and creating spreadsheets and looking at all the numbers all the time instead of actually doing some things that'll actually be productive.
Right. And data is great, as you know, but if you don't do something about the data, you can just perseverate over like all of these numbers and what do these mean and what do you think about this and what do you think about that? And I get emails from people periodically and they're like, here's what I'm seeing. What do you think? And I always go back to the basics. I'm like, okay, so maybe retention ticks up a bit. It's like, could it be this? Could it be that? Is it seasonal? Is it this? And I'm like, are you sending 5 text messages? Is every coach sending at least 5 text messages after every shift? They're like, I'm not sure. I'm like, okay, why don't you start there? It's like, are we running the 7 core tenets of a great session? Is it the best customer experience we can create based on what's already there for us? Are we doing that with conviction? Are we secret shopping our coaches to make sure it's happening? No. Okay. Well, instead of thinking it's like the lunar eclipse or whatever, like let's start there, right? Let's start with the basics. And I think sometimes the basics are hard. I'm not saying that everyone's shying away from hard work. I'm just saying I think it's human nature to look for the secret or the the silver bullet. And a lot of times there's not one. It's just what's right in front of you. It just needs to be done consistently well with conviction, which is very difficult to do, as you know.
Sure. Well, I mean, and like I said, data is good. And we have weekly data that we put together. We have scorecards. We have 90-day goals.
One of our pillars in EOS is you run your business based on data.
But why you have that is so that you can take action on that and to make improvements, right? And that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah,
it's like,
perfect.
You can just look at the data all day and then be like, I don't know what to do. It's like, well, all right, if you are having a retention issue, are you doing any of those things? Are you secret shopping? Have you actually spoken to any members that maybe, are quitting or something like that to actually get to
Well,
root of the problem?
I just took an email as an example from one of our top performers, and he was like, hey, I'm slotting a new person into this role. We're not getting the response rate from the leads that we normally would get. Now, all the variables are the same market, same people in that market, same trainers on the back. All the things are the same. The only variable that's changed is there's now a new director in the seat, right?
Right.
But again, the questions are, could it be seasonal? Have the leads changed? I'm like, look, man, let's look at the Occam's razor. Like, it's got to be the person. Everything else is consistently the same. This gym has been in business for a couple of years, so it's not like a brand new and haven't figured it out. But again, it's sometimes when you're that close to it, even if you're the investor, you're just looking at data. It's like you try to figure out like creative solutions to what are essentially simple problems. They're not easy problems, but they're simple problems, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's a big one. The next one inside of time management we see is, people tend to focus on things that they like to do that maybe not make them uncomfortable, as opposed to doing the things that help them grow the business or get better. So, for example, I've had many of directors and business owners over the years, and they just get sucked into the gym and just do a lot more training than they should be doing and servicing members, as opposed to growing the business.
Yeah, no, 100%. And we've talked about this a million times. It's really easy to do the things that you like to do. So you mentioned before, like spreadsheets. So if you have somebody that comes from a finance or an accounting background, they're probably going to bury themselves in spreadsheets, and they're going to actually enjoy that, right? I've known business owners in the past, certainly not in the franchise structure that we're in now, that would literally do their own flooring and install their own equipment and do all these things. And then it comes to find out they love construction and they like home building projects and stuff. It's like, okay. Meanwhile, in the same breath that they're like, yeah, I spent all week like installing new flooring in my gym and did all these things, but didn't get out and do community-based marketing or whatever that is, because they like construction and they like to put down flooring. And I mean, who doesn't like to do a project that has a distinct end to it, which you don't get that a lot in entrepreneurship, right? Where you lay down the floor and you're like, ta-da, It's finished, right? That feels good. But that's emotional regulation. To control that, hire somebody to do your flooring. Go do the thing you don't want to do, right? We talked about that in the Hard Things podcast. Go do the community-based marketing that you have never done. You've never left your gym, right, in a year and a half. Get out and do that, as opposed to doing the thing you want to do, which is posting on Instagram some workouts or laying flooring or whatever the thing is that you have a tendency to like to do. It's really hard to avoid doing those things, and especially if they're not high leverage activities. Yeah. And you won't see them as such. Like your mind can tell you that those things are really important, but nothing's more important than the next person in your community that you could help for the health of your business, as well as, the health of the people that you're going to be helping in your community. We talked about this. I think you brought this up, Matt. When we first got into franchising, we had an older franchise business coach that came in, and he was coaching businesses before digital marketing was even a thing. So like back in the 80s. And he was saying, listen, when I coached, and it was a sort of a Minuteman Press type of, I don't remember the name of it, but it was sort of like a copy center, and they did B2B, basically relationships, where they're a big money maker. And he's like, if I could get the store owners, the franchisees, to get out of their store just one day a week for like 3 hours, on average, those particular businesses would have 30% higher revenue.
Just crazy,
people that wouldn't. 30% higher, and they only had to leave their gym one day a week for 3 hours. And I would say across the board, any business that I've ever worked with, including in our franchise structure, it's tough to get people out and about in their communities, right? It's just one of those things where you got to muster up some energy. You have to go talk to people that you don't know. And it's much easier to stay back in the office and look at data and figure out what else is going on, when in fact, it's really right in front of you. You just don't want to go do it, right? So anyway, again, it's how you leverage your time And you need to understand, certainly if you're in our system, we're going to point you in the right direction, but you still got to do it.
Sure.
You still have to kill that crazy, human tendency to do just what you like. And you've got to get out and do things that actually move the needle on the business.
And then not only is it, they do, you do what you like, which, it's safer for you. It doesn't make you uncomfortable to obviously go out and do the community outreach and stuff. But then in your mind, you create it that you don't have time. Right, you don't have any time to do all the other things. Great point. You know what I'm saying?
Right, like I'm so busy.
Yeah,
but you're not productive, right? Because I can be busy all day long. Like I'll even tell you, like through my lens as like a visionary. Like if you look at the vernacular of like a EOS, right? You got an integrator, a visionary. Mm-hmm. I don't have a lot of daily tasks, and sometimes it feels really uncomfortable because I don't have like things to do. And I mean, but the natural tendency would be then to dive in and stay busy all day doing things. But that's more than likely at the expense of what I really need, which is a lot of blue sky time to think and about where we're headed next. And, I'm making a lot fewer decisions, but they're way more impactful. Well, you can't do that if your head's in the weeds all the time doing daily tasks, right? Yeah, but it's still uncomfortable, right? Because like for me to feel, and I'm air quoting productive, I need to be doing things, right? But doing things, especially if they're not moving the needle, and they're not super productive, it's literally at the expense of what my role needs to be. Right. It's the same thing as what you're saying, I think.
Yeah,
right?
You're not growing the business and you're just focusing on in the house.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing.
But you can't, you're uncomfortable not doing that, right?
Right. Well, that's it. And to your point, then I would then say to you, like, man, we need to have an offsite meeting or whatever. It's like, oh, I can't. I'm too busy, right? That could be. Or like you need to think about where you're headed next quarter for this marketing initiative, like brand wide. What do we need to do, right? Do we need to create this? I can't even think about that because in my mind, I'm so air quotes busy because I've just created busy work that are low leverage activities for me to do that somehow validates me that I'm productive, but I'm really not productive. I'm just busy.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yep. 100%. Another one we see is, people bogging themselves down with time management with other tasks, like say as simply as like, I'm going to work on creating a new t-shirt design, or I'm going to create a new challenge. Again, it kind of speaks to what we just spoke about, where it's just like I'm busy work doing things, but nothing really going to high leverage impact the business kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's the same. This is what we've talked about. Like if you like to make t-shirt designs for Halloween because you're a festive person and you want to do that for your gym, that's great. But if you do that, you could definitely hire that out, right? If you do that at the expense of doing higher leverage things in your business, again, you're just choosing what you like over what's best for the business. And a lot of that's the emotional regulation. So it's the self-recognition that you're doing it and the emotional regulation to prevent doing it.
Yep. So time management, lots of things going on within your role of your owner, director. Make sure that you are, thinking about your day and to do the things that are going to move the needle the most, right?
Yep.
Don't let yourself get bogged down with nothing. Next one we're going to talk about, this is a big one. You just kind of spoke on a little bit, community marketing. Obviously, outreach is a big part of our business. Speaking to other businesses, working events, handing materials, we have a lot of things going on. Things with inside of that is what I see folks we do a lot is we just do things, right? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I worked this event, I went to this business, etc. As opposed to doing something for a purpose, right? Like the first thing we always talk to people about is like, have goals for this event you're going to do, right? So Rick, you're going to work this 5K. I want you to come back.
I've got a booth at a 5K as an example. How am I going to attract people to my booth, right? And then what am I going to do when I get them to my booth to collect some information and have a relevant conversation?
Right.
Maybe book them right then for a starting point session. And then what am I going to do with those leads that I've produced after the event is over?
Right.
Right.
So have a purpose for that. You have it set up. It's not just like going to work that 5K. So to be successful when we do these things, goals wise, right? When you send somebody out, you do it yourself. You have to have something to work towards, no matter what, right? If you don't, you're just whatever we get. That's not a good mentality.
Well, and again, it goes back to like, are you busy? Are you productive? So if you go and you do a lunch and learn as an example, and one of your objectives would be to get everyone's name and email and to follow up with them. Maybe, a common play for us would be like, hey, sign up here and there'll be a raffle for a giveaway or something, right? And you could do that at, say, that 5K, or like we've got little community events around here where you can do those things. So let's say you get 25 names, 25 people signed up. That means they're interested in your business. They would like to win whatever prize it is, which is more than likely going to be services at your business. They're interested in fitness, or they wouldn't have even put their name down. So you've got 25 leads there, right? Now you're only going to draw, say, for one person typically. Yep. So you draw for that one person. And we've had businesses that I know that have said, well, I would ask, what did you do with the other 24 leads that you got? And they're like, well, I would send them an email later or whatever. It's like, no, reach out to them and say, hey, bummer, you didn't win the prize, but guess what? As a gift to you for even stopping by, I really enjoyed meeting you. I loved hearing about your kids' soccer team, whatever the little personal details are. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to offer you blank. And whatever that blank is you're going to offer them, it could just be your normal hook, but it just needs to feel special to that person, right? And then you just need to follow up. And I will tell you what that means. Follow up in this case means you keep following up until they tell you to leave them alone or they say yes. You need a yes or a no. You can't just leave them hanging out there. I think there's a misconception, certainly in our industry, that we like what we do so much that there's a perception of build it and they will come, which is not reality. You have to really, remember, you are a coach. We are an aspirational business. We're selling somebody something that they really don't want to do, but they know that they need that coach in their life. And so your role is to push people to make a healthy decision to change their lives. And the pushback that you might get, Matt, if you were coaching me is like, well, I feel too pushy or I don't want to bother people. It's like, well, heaven forbid you bother them into making a healthy change in their life. And we've had plenty of examples of, messages that we're sent by clients of Alloy locations that will say, thanks for following up with me 7 or 8 times because I was really just busy. I wasn't ignoring you. And had you not done that, I would have never come in here. And since I've been here, it's literally changed my life. Yeah. So that should be plenty of evidence for everyone to hear that and be convicted enough to really follow up, right?
That was 100%. Are you busy outside of here? You got things going on?
Right. Yeah.
You think about it, right?
Yes.
And like you said, it's a aspirational. This is an emotional decision. Sales in general is an emotional decision, right? You may talk to somebody one time, and they maybe not in that state after they filled out that, raffle ticket or whatever, but you talk to them again in 2 weeks and you've been persistent up to that point. You might be back in that emotional, I need to do something. Thanks for reaching out.
You know what? You're right. I felt really bad today. I tried to go for a walk. I was super out of breath. I couldn't keep up with my friends, or I went to play pickleball. My knee hurts. It's like, this is BS, right?
Yeah.
I was super winded. So I'm glad you called. I am ready. But if you don't do that, you're never going to get that opportunity, right? So if you're going to go out, to your point, if you're going to do a thing, do it well. If you're going to do a community event, have a goal with how many leads that you're going to get. And then for heaven's sake, follow up with those leads relentlessly until they either say no or they come in and change their lives. That's it.
Yeah.
And that should be your lens on it every time, right? Otherwise, why do the community event? You could claim that it's good for branding, and I might agree with you. But if you're at a time of business growth, like new in your business, branding is great. Long-term play, if your gym is already full, it's not the best play if you're trying to, measure progress of a marketing campaign.
Right.
So I'm going to go and do this event, and you maybe do 3 of those in a month, and then you want to zoom out and pull up, our ops manual and be like, hey, Alloy Ops, what were the results of these 3 marketing campaigns? Because you'll need to know whether or not you either need to improve your play or go back to the well and do more of it. If it was really productive, it's not expensive. It's just your time, right?
Yep.
Go back and do more of it. So anyway, there's a lot to unpack there, obviously. But to your point, it's the way you do it, not just doing it. Because if you're not careful, you'll tell yourself, and I'm air quoting this doesn't work because you did not see a direct return on investment. But the thing is, you didn't do it that well. So of course you're not going to see return on investment, right? It'd be like working out. Let's say you went to the gym and you just did a bunch of BS exercises, didn't get your heart rate up, didn't lift enough weight to stimulate any type of muscle growth or strength, right? And then said working out doesn't work for me. It's the same thing. You're doing it. You're just not doing it well.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah. Great. Last one we're going to talk about is phone sales. Now, phone sales, we could talk about phone sales.
Phone sales are hard. We talk a lot about phone sales, folks. I'll tell you right now, we could do a whole podcast on phone. We have. I think we had Adam on to do that.
Yeah, 100%. We could talk all day on that. We kind of broke it down into some separate categories. So in terms of phone sales, doing it well, here are some of the things that we put together as terms of got to do these things first things well. So the first one, active listening. I listen to lots of sales calls. Some can be very painful. One of the biggest things I see if, folks struggle with is we don't actively listen to what the actual person is saying. And I get it. You're caught up and you're trying to follow the script and the play, right? But what that leads to is, as you can imagine, not quality conversation, and you're not giving that client back what they actually need. Right? Have you seen that before?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think the script is more like a kind of loose GPS, right? Where it's like there's a start point, which is, say, on the call, start of the call, and there's a finish point. We need to get there. Now, on that journey, it can go a lot of different places. And I think, to your point, having a true interest in others and being an active listener would mean that if the conversation needs to go to a certain place for that person individually, that you go there. I know this sounds so intuitive. It almost feels ridiculous to say this, to say these things, because it seems like it would be so obvious. But I'm telling you, what we've observed is when people are nervous or they are new to phone sales, they will tend to follow a script. Sometimes certainly at the expense of the sale, and some examples which are humorous, and I'm not certainly picking on whoever these folks were. I just remember these stories where we had an example where we were listening to a call and a lady, like the person gets on the phone, how'd you hear about us, what have you, tell me about your goals, right? Great place to start as a basic example. And the person was like, yeah, listen, I feel so bad about myself. I was at a regular gym the other day and I was on the treadmill next to this really attractive person who looked really great. And I felt so bad about myself, that I just didn't even want to work out. I mean, I want to jump off a bridge kind of idea, right? And it was pretty profound. And then there's something there. Now, if you were having a regular conversation with someone and they said something like that, you'd be like, man, that's terrible. Like, why would you say that? It seems like you got a reason for saying that. And let them dig in a little bit more, right? But if you're just following a script, as was this individual, the very next question is like, well, have you ever heard of alloy? Can you imagine that? Like, hey, I felt so bad about myself, I'd like to jump off a bridge. I think the response was literally, great. Have you ever heard of alloy?
Right.
How could that be great? Like, listen, right? I know it sounds obviously intuitive, but it's not, because if you're nervous and you are trying to get from point A to point B and trying to make all those left and right turns and follow it perfectly, great. But the more important thing is where you're taking off, where you need this thing to land. But in between that, man, you got to do what you said. You got to be an active listener.
Active listener, true interest in others. Wait for your turn to speak. Don't just everybody's just like, grr,
Well, and basically again, you have to get in the right frame of mind. Like, I'm going to talk to this individual. They are truly an individual. I care about them as a person. I want to help them. The only way we're going to get there is if I can find out as much as possible about them. Now, if you want to zoom out from a tactical standpoint, there is the adage, whoever's talking is losing in sales. So you're best off asking a million questions. I would highly suggest reading even Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, which is mainly about negotiating. But that's kind of what sales is because you're trying to negotiate to get someone to move your way, to do it, to change their lives, essentially, which is not always the easiest thing to do, right? But, he has an example in there, something called mirroring. And mirroring is like asking someone a question back about the thing that they just said to you, right? So if you said to me, I was on the treadmill and I felt so terrible, I literally could just say to that, which sounds silly, but you try it in a real conversation. I could then say, man, you felt terrible? And they'd be like, yes. And they would tell you more.
Right.
And you could literally build an entire conversation just on mirroring. He has a great example. He's got a little series. If you fly Delta now, there was a Chris Voss series where you could listen to these little 8-minute snippets, right? And he went through a series and he talked a lot about, examples of this. And he had a client that he was working with that had to go to his wife's Christmas party and he didn't want to go. And he's not a very social guy. So he's like, you know what? I'm just going to mirror the whole night and see what happens. So he didn't talk at all. The entire night he was meeting his wife's coworkers and mirroring. So they would be like, oh, I'm from West Coast. He's like, oh, you're from the West Coast? And they, oh yeah. And they kept talking. And then it was so funny because his wife was so happy. She got all this feedback that your husband is the nicest guy. We love him so much, man. What a great guy. Such a dynamic guy. Never said 2 words. Literally spent his entire night mirroring. Never said a word.
It's awesome.
It's that effective. But I mean, if you study some just basic human behavior, you could start out with, have you heard of alloy? No. It's like, okay, well, tell me about your goals. Well, now you start mirroring, right? Well, I want to lose weight. Oh, you want to lose weight? Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know how much. It's like, oh, you're not sure exactly how much? Well, I mean, I know how much. Look, 20 pounds. Oh, 20 pounds. Yeah, 20 pounds. You know what I mean? Like you could literally do that for 20 minutes and probably land that plane perfectly just asking questions. But the point is, be a good listener It's about the other person on the phone. If they're talking, you're winning because you're collecting good information. They're less likely to dump this emotional stuff on the next person, right? So they're invested in you right now. You're invested in them. And all you have to do is ask questions. It's really that simple. So yes, the script will get you there if you get lost. But at the end of the day, as long as you end up in the same place, right, you're going to be much better off if you are a normal human being.
100%. Something you talk about a lot, and we coach here, is tonality, conviction, walking, and I like to throw in smiling, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's been proven time and time again. I had a buddy that started a financial planning services company. He's a really smart guy. Now he's uber successful. But when he first started, he would work from home and he just had a cold call. So he would literally get up, take a shower, put on a suit, stand in his bedroom in front of his mirror and just cold call people all day. But he was dressed appropriately, so it would change his tonality and his conviction and his idea of who he was to those people.
Right.
And I don't care what you say, all that comes out in those calls. So to your point, if you're sitting in an office, you're woofing down some egg whites out of a Tupperware container or whatever. I'm just picking on trainers. I've done it. Chicken and broccoli. And you're trying to make calls, great. But how about you stand up and walk around a bit, right? Create more energy, smile, work on your posture, because no matter what you say, all of that stuff is going to come out in your conviction on that call, right?
Yeah, 100%. And then people will feel that and it's going to affect your sales.
Right. So you can say, I made 50 calls today. And that may be true, but did you make 50 good calls that day? Did you ask a million questions, right? And show some true interest? Did you approach it with absolute conviction and that comes out in your body, stand up straight, right? Use the right tone, project energy. Like enthusiasm is everything in our business. So are you super enthusiastic to help this person, right? Or are you just flat because you're a little bit tired that day? It's like, well, get in the right mindset, right? Like, let's go. We're trying to change lives here.
Yep.
So it's not making the calls, it's making the calls correctly or well. Yeah. So you're right.
No, that's great. The last one I'm going to throw on that is, I stole this one from you a long time ago, but I often see folks over-explaining, right? Everybody wants to talk about the thing. And one of the, I don't know, I think you probably told me this like 15 years ago, but one of the things you said was, don't sell the braces, sell the smile. I've heard this several different ways. Don't sell the sizzle, sell the, sell the steak. Don't sell the plane, sell the vacation. But, what you see on the phone, it comes back to the beginning, maybe, nervous, going following the script, is people want to talk about the thing. Nobody really wants, if you think about it from a braces standpoint, nobody wants to buy braces, or if you're going to get them to buy braces, you're not going to be able to sell them by saying like, oh, it's going to be 3 years of pain. You got to come to the dentist 5 days a week. We're going to tighten the shit out of those things and all the kids are going to make fun of you. Right? What they're going to sell you is what you're going to look like at the end of this. A beautiful smile, right? Or from the plane analogy, right? You're going to sell a vacation. You're going to be on the beach, sitting your feet in the sand. It's not going to be, we're going to the airport, standing in 2 hours of security at Hartsfield. You're going to lose your bag, right? And you're not selling that. And it's the same thing with training, right? All right, we're going to get you your goal. We're going to work out with kettlebells, dumbbells. We're going to 3 days a week. We're going to work out really hard. Right. Right. And this is by the end of this, you're going to look great. You're going to feel you're going to lose that 20 pounds. You're going to play with your grandkids and all that, right? It's sell the dream, right? Not the actual process to get there.
It's such a great point. I love the plane analogy too, because like it does suck like getting there. If it's planes, trains, and automobiles, if you're going to the BVI, you got to like take a plane and you got to get on a boat and there's like a line and it's all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you're going to be on this beautiful beach. That's what you want to, and that's what you want to think about, right? And so, to your point, I think it goes back to also just ask more questions, because if someone's like, it might be a common occurrence on a phone, a flow might be ring, ring, hello. It's like, yeah, hey, this is Rick from Alloy Personal Training. I'm just following up. I saw that you showed some interest on Facebook. How can I help you? And they're like, oh, well, tell me what you guys do. What is it that you do? It would be very easy just to start telling them what we do without any context, right? But the real response should be, well, we do a lot of things. I mean, our main service is personal training. So we are here to help you. So let's do some discovery and talk about your goals a little bit. And I'll tell you exactly what we can do to help you. Sound fair? They're like, great. Awesome. Tell me what you've been doing, right? Oh, that's interesting. And mirror, right? Oh, man, I've been running a little bit. Oh, you run. Well, I mean, I run a little bit, but my knee's been hurting. Oh, so your knee's hurting? Yes, my knee's hurting. Go there. Right? It's very easy to just flip the script, right? And go there. Or But if, to your point, if you aren't aware of this and you aren't self-aware and you don't practice and you don't do this with conviction, it will turn into, tell me what you guys do. And we've literally timed it. And 12 minutes later, the person is still talking about what we do. You've probably completely lost the interest of the person on the other end of the phone because there's no context as to what that is, how it's going to benefit them. You haven't taken a breath to even let them ask questions. Remember, if you're asking questions, you're winning, right? So you go there. And so, yeah, to your point, like, don't sell the stuff. And we love the stuff. That's the thing. Coaches, owners, investors, like, we know it's so cool. It's amazing. You know, we can train with up to 6 people. So we get the benefits of the community of a class with the one-on-one attention and personal training at a much better cost. Honestly, if I'm calling in to hear about the place, blah, blah,
Right.
blah.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
What does that even mean? What do you mean small group? How many people's that? 6 people? What? Huh? What do you do? Like, I want to know, how can you help me with my
Are you going to give me
goals?
the most successful option?
Yeah, exactly. Right. I'm on fire. Do you have water? That's what I need to know. Right.
Yeah,
We talk about that. Like I'm literally on fire, meaning I'm unhealthy. I've made the choice to make a call to a brand that says personal training on the door. I need some help. Are you the water to my fire? That's all I need to know. Anything else other than
Part
that?
of those questions help people realize they're on fire.
Great point.
Right. You
Yeah.
ask enough right questions and they're like, so like, Rick, it sounds like you've been struggling with the wrong time. If you don't do anything now, what happens?
Yeah, I mean, again, so to your point, that might be the response to, like, hey, it's really busy right now during the holidays. Maybe I'll touch base with you in the new year. You're like, let me ask you something. How many do holidays come around every year? Yes. Yeah. Is it traditionally a hard time to work out for most people? Would you agree?
Yeah.
Great. So how about this? Let's use this as an opportunity this year. If we can start to build some great habits during a really busy time of the year, it's going to be much easier in the downtime of year. Agreed?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so let's take this as opportunity because we can't do this. There's always something. There's a holiday, there's a vacation, there's kid stuff, there's grandkid stuff. Like that, we have to be able to navigate around that. That's where we're going to be successful. So let's start right now. Fair enough? Great. So there's always opportunities there, but you really have to care about the person to understand that, right?
Yeah. Care, be ready to sell, right? You're excited, you're convicted. I mean, one of the things I always talk about you is, this is the most excited CEO on the planet.
True.
Right? You're not even selling and you're selling, right? You're just excited
when it was COVID,
about
I started walking around my neighborhood. I really had never done that because I was always going into an office or traveling. So it's like, I'm home now. And I think half my neighborhood was coming in here to work out because I would just bump into them and they're like, hey, what do you guys do? And I'm in decent shape, certainly for my age. And so they'd be like, be teasing me about working out. I'm like, well, you need to get your butt in there. I'd start talking to them. And I'm like, well, they're like, yeah, I should. I'm like, well, yeah, you should. But like, what does that mean? Like, are you going to or not? They're like, yeah. I'm like, I'm going to be there tomorrow. If you haven't called up there and I see you out here again, I'm going to talk to you about it. And they'd be like, fine. And they would call. Like, they'd call like that afternoon and be like, hey, I talked to Rick in the neighborhood. Like, I'm coming in. It's like, I'm not even really selling. I care about my neighbors.
Yeah.
I want them to be healthier. That's where I'm starting. That's where it comes from. And they feel it, right? It's not like I'm selling them. I'm air quoting, right?
Did you tell them what equipment we have and the blueprint of the studio?
I literally didn't mention one thing about what we do. They might say, hey, you're in the fitness business, right? I'm like, yeah, we do personal training. I'm like, come up there. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's great. I need something because I got a bad shoulder. I'm like, dude, you can't roll a rock through the room without hitting somebody with a bad shoulder. I have a bad shoulder. Like, we can easily work around that. They're like, oh, cool. I'm going to call you. Nothing about kettlebells. Nothing about 6-to-1. Right. Nothing about price.
Because it doesn't matter.
None of that matters. Are you on fire? Do I have the water to put out that fire? Period.
Yeah.
So first of all, tell me you're on fire. I'll tell you that I've got water. Let's do some business together. Right. That's at the end of it, man. That's
Was you the one that told me the Lamborghini story where the guy goes to buy a Lamborghini and he goes and talks to the salesperson and the salesperson immediately goes into, how fast the Lamborghini goes.
Oh, I think it was a Corvette.
Was it Corvette?
Yeah, this was an online thing where he's like, hey man, like the guy comes in, he's like, hey, I'm looking for a Corvette. And the guy's like, oh dude, this is going to be awesome. Yeah. He's like, this thing goes 0 to 60 this fast. It's got these kind of brakes on it. All he talks about is the speed, performance, how loud the engine is.
Yeah.
He's like, dude, you're going to put the top down. You're going to be able to attract some serious women with this thing. Well, it turns out the guy's in there to buy it for his 16-year-old daughter. So if you're selling a Corvette to a guy, which sounds crazy anyway, but if you're selling a Corvette to a guy for a 16-year-old daughter, are you going to talk about how sexy he's going to look in it? Are you going to talk about how fast it goes? Are you going to talk about how it lines up against all the other exotic sports cars? Or are you going to talk about safety, right? Safety protocols, again, the perfect ABS system to keep her, it's good in the rain. I mean, whatever the things are that automobile would speak to safety to keep your 16-year-old safe. that's where you'd go. But if you don't even ask the question at the start,
just make assumptions.
You're just selling stuff to someone that may not even be the right stuff, right? They don't even want to hear it. So, dude, all this stuff to me sounds so easy and simple. But again, you can make plenty of phone calls. You can make plenty of sales presentations. But if you don't understand these basic concepts, you're doing the work, just doing the work well, right? And that's the whole theme. So basically, time management, make sure you use the biggest levers, right, for your time. Make sure you're not just doing things you like, that you're actually doing things that'll move the business forward. If you're with Alloy, we're going to coach you up on these things, but it's still up to you to like kill your emotions, right? And in some ways, and get out and do those things. Next, community marketing. Again, what's your goal out in the community? Your goal is to go out and attract people to your business so that you can change lives. That means you have to get out there and you have to hustle. You have to have a goal. You have to ask people for names, phone numbers, and you have to follow up relentlessly. That's it, period, right? And then lastly, we talked about phone sales because that's just a big gap that we see. And all you need to do is keep asking questions until you land that plane in the right spot and say, look, we're the perfect spot for you. Morning or evenings, what's going to work better for you?
Yep.
When we had Adam on to talk about pre-sales, to wrap it up, he basically said, I don't even ask. I just said, all right, great. Well, I'm going to put you down for Wednesday night at 6:00. So we'll see you then. Sound good? And they're like, okay.
Yeah, just assumptive selling.
Yeah. I mean, he's like, I get on the phone with them assuming that they're going to sign up. And I ask a bunch of questions and I lead them to the right place. And then I just tell them that I'm going to sign them up. And he's like, and then they may have a few follow-up questions to that, which I'll answer. And then we're good to go.
Yep.
It's not that hard.
100%.
All right, man. Appreciate it. That's good insight. And all just different functions that are within an Alloy or a lot of fitness businesses that, if done well, are vastly different than just being done.
Yep.
Fair enough?
You got it.
Peace.